So yeah, I mean, that's something that I talk about as well with my coaching is like, instead of working with somebody who is, the biggest guy and oh, well, I'm going to get on his program because he's the biggest dude, so he probably knows how to get big. I would much rather work with somebody who, has like a rags to riches story and started where I am and had the same problems, because the guy who has always had an easy time isn't going to know how to navigate those waters. It's like, would you rather take financial advice from a trust fund baby or somebody who was like homeless that became rich,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was a basketball player when I was younger, and basketball is sort of, to me, the clearest example of genetics. I remember, I think I heard John Thompson say one time, you can't teach tall, right?
Exactly.
So like, I mean, like Shaquille O'Neal is in the Hall of Fame, and the guy shot 45% career from the free throw line. Like there's guys in rec basketball that shoot better than that. So when you're 7'2" and 320 pounds, you can shoot 42% from the free throw line.
Yeah.
And get in the Hall of Fame.
Totally, man. And I sort of see it as like a funnel, right? Like, let's say there's 5 things that make somebody great. Like it's, their height, their hand-eye coordination, their whatever, like type 2 muscle fiber distribution, blah, blah, blah. Most people have like one of these things. Some people have 2 or 3, but the people who are going to be elite are the very few who have all 5, right? They have the work ethic, they have the coach, they have the desire, and they have the genes. And those things all come together, in an amalgamation to produce an elite athlete.
Yeah, and those people are especially rare. Like, I'm an older guy, but like I think about, I go back to the basketball example. I think about Michael Jordan. He was the quintessential example of the person who had the talent and the work ethic.
Exactly.
He had all the tools, and he had a good attitude, and knew how to work hard.
Yeah.
So I mean, but there's a lot of times there's just guys that just get by on talent alone.
Sure.
And as far as coaching goes, that's the worst person to take advice from.
Exactly.
Right. Like you said, it's like taking advice from the trust fund baby on how to be a millionaire. I'm like, well, dude, you were born a millionaire.
Yeah, sure. And from the coaching perspective, one thing that I think is important that you probably run into a lot with like some higher level athletes that you work with is, a lot of people have this mentality of like, well, I have all the knowledge, like I know how to get there, I'm pretty high level. But regardless, like the best MLB pitcher still has a pitching coach, right? So like, even if you are great, it still will benefit you to have that kind of like somebody with a bird's eye view and an objective set of eyes to dial in what you need to do. Cause like you always have your blinders on. Like, I mean, even my assistant coach for me that works with some of my clients, he programs for me not because of a knowledge gap, but simply because like I am in my own head and I can only see what I can see.
Right. Yeah. You can't be objective about yourself. Nobody is. Well, I think there are rare exceptions. They're extremely rare. But it's, even like Tom Brady had a bunch, he had a nutritionist, he had a strength trainer, he had a quarter QB coach, and Tom Brady's highly intelligent, right? So everybody needs, and that's a thing. Like with me, I've had success in bodybuilding and business and just many areas of my life. And one thing I definitely learned, and I'm not just saying this to push coaching on anybody, but I definitely learned a long time ago, seek out the smartest people at what you're doing, pay them for their help and advice, and learn from them, listen to them, learn from them, get their objective view on things, and you actually will shortcut the process by doing that.
Yeah, I actually, I just talked about this in a YouTube video yesterday. Is like a lot of people who are in business, they're very averse to spending money on, either like coaching or hiring employees to help them, because if they're not thinking long term, they're thinking of like the initial upfront investment of something,
right?
But they're not thinking about like, well, hey, if I pay this guy $5,000, it's then going to allow me, whether it's through education or just freeing up my time and creative energy, to then go make $50,000. But sometimes people don't think like long-term ROI like that. They just think about like, oh, this is going to make my bank account look smaller.
Well, it's not a coincidence that the most successful work with the most successful. I mean, it's just not a coincidence. I mean, Michael Jordan worked with Tim Grover, who's considered the best athletic trainer of all time. He worked with Kobe Bryant and Dwayne Wade and a bunch of other people. I mean, there's gurus and everything. In business, there's gurus that know how to work and do things, and you invest in yourself. I mean, it's just like going to college to me. Like you pay for an education, and that education teaches you the process and actually cuts out wasted time and money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a long-term kind of thought process. So,
Well, I look at it like just from my perspective, like working with people in nutrition, like I see a lot of times, like when I have people come to me and I help them with nutrition and getting their diet dialed in, a lot of times I can pay for what the cost of the coaching is by just getting rid of all of the periphery junk supplements they're taking
yeah.
and cutting down on the amount of food that they're eating out and things like that. And I've more than paid for myself most of the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. And that's definitely true when you're getting people who are already dedicated. And some of the objections that I run into as a coach is like obviously the money thing with people who are more like on a kind of the start of their fitness journey or restarting things. And obviously, one of the objections I get is like, well, it's expensive, I can't afford it. And I'm like, okay, let's go over, I don't literally say this, but it's like go over your bank statement, go over all the things you spent money on this month that not only didn't help you, but also took you further away from this goal that you say you have. And now you just eliminate those things and you reallocate it towards this thing that's going to change your life. It's that simple. But what I have found is that a lot of people actually don't want to solve their problem. They just want to find reasons why they can't, and then have somebody validate that so they can sleep at night.
Yeah, no, that's 100% what it is. It's validation for not doing it. I mean, look, you can pay for the cost of a competent coach for what it costs to get one latte at Starbucks every day.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, for the most part, 250, $300 a month, people blow that at Starbucks all the time.
Sure. Yeah. And I think a lot of the times money is just a convenient excuse because it's very taboo to talk about. And
Yep.
so it's a lot harder for somebody on the other end to say like, well, no, you actually do have the money, because that's like a very kind of like offensive way of talking in our culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's salesy, but it's not wrong.
Yeah.
It's not wrong. But, ultimately, the people that have the desire will find the way to get it done. That's
100%.
what I found.
Sure. So, yeah, let's jump right in, man. I'm sure you've got a lot going on. Say you're a busy guy, you got a lot of clients and stuff. But if you could just introduce yourself real quick and kind of talk about like, who you are, what you do, maybe a short synopsis of your background, and then yeah, we can dive right into the discussion.
Well, I am Paul Barnett, aka Big Paul, on social media. I am IFBB pro bodybuilder and a retired tech CEO. I'm just a gym bro that loves nutrition, performance enhancement, training. I've been at this off and on since I was a teenager. Worked as a personal trainer through college. Did bodybuilding through my 20s. Got fat in my 30s. The typical old. I got a family. Started a business, all that shit, and I took one day off from the gym, and it turned into 12 years. And then got myself back in shape in my 40s. Had my redemption story, and got my pro card in my later years, and and I've been coaching people off and on for 30 years. More so recently, I do it full time now. I did it full time when I was in college, just in gym personal trainer when I was in college and nutritionist. But I really, I probably am known more for performance enhancement on social media, but really nutrition is probably my passion. That's where my passion lies.
Yeah, and that's what gets the clicks, dude. Is the putting the drug names in the titles of the videos and stuff like that. And actually, yeah, dude, I love your whole story. Like you have an awesome origin story. It's obviously super relatable. So I first found Paul, man, it was a couple years ago when your channel was first really taking off. I was in EMT school, and I would go on these like long walks in the morning to kind of get myself ready before I got into the fire academy. And I would just pop in my YouTube, pop in my headphones, and just kind of go through your latest YouTube drops, dude. I just lived for the next time Paul was going to post something, dude, because PEDs
I
are
appreciate it.
yeah, something I'm very interested in as well. And obviously all like the training nutrition things too. So the reason that I wanted to interview you primarily is because there is some overlap between like kind of our styles and our philosophies with training and PEDs and nutrition, and our audience as well. However, my sort of like philosophy is very geared towards performance and increasing the big three, and obviously like physique development as well. Whereas it seems like your obviously your passion's bodybuilding specifically. And so what I would like to kind of discuss is like some of the similarities and differences in training for performance and versus hypertrophy, and like what's similar and what's different. So
I mean, I enjoy all of it, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not just bodybuilding for me. I do all of the above. Perform, I'm an athlete at heart. I played basketball when I was younger. I've done Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I like increasing performance. I've done some recreational cycling. I wouldn't say I was a competitive cyclist, but I like going out for long rides. And I just like being active and doing things with my body and challenging myself. And I think the thing I liked about bodybuilding, it's sort of my Mount Everest. It's a really difficult, challenging thing that a lot of people can't do, well, or I guess choose not to do, because it's not easy getting yourself down to 5% body fat to get on a bodybuilding stage. There's no hiding when you're on a bodybuilding stage in a thong up there. I mean, your work is presented for everybody to see, so you can't hide from what you've done. There's no, great lighting at the gym and Instagram filters and shit. Like it's all out there for everybody to see. So you're putting it all on the line, and I kind of like that. I kind of like being under pressure. I kind of like putting it all out there and stepping up to perform. I like that in business too. I think I'm a type of person who thrives in pressure situations, and to me, and that's kind of the metaphor of sports and athleticism. It's difficult. It's learning how to perform under pressure, whether it's basketball or jujitsu or running a marathon. Bodybuilding, to me, it's all the same mentality. It really boils down to your mindset, and that's why I love sports and athletic endeavors, because they really are a metaphor for everything that you do in life. Learning how to push yourself, learning how to be, for a lack of better terms, the cliche saying, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Learning how to be better at things by working hard and doing difficult things. And I think practicing doing difficult things really can apply to everything you do in life: business, relationships, sports, whatever. And I think that's why I love bodybuilding, because your hard work shows on your physique.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, a lot of people in other sports will make fun of bodybuilding and say, oh, you're getting up on stage oiled up in a man thong. But dude, honestly, like as far as sports go, I would say it's probably one of the hardest. And the reason is because it is a 24/7 sport, right? Like if I'm training for performance, there's so much wiggle room as far as like nutrition and lifestyle goes, as opposed to like with bodybuilding, it's like a few grams of carbohydrates can make or break you at some point. And so it requires like a 24/7 dedication that a lot of people don't have, or I think a lot of the times it's not recognized. And yeah, I like the point about like fitness sort of being like a catalyst for every other aspect of your life. So with my clients, obviously like I'm a fitness coach, and so that's kind of like what I talk about mostly on my page. But what I found is that it sort of just acts like this thing that forces you to it like permeates through every other aspect of your life to push forward. So
Yep.
my origin story is like I'm a tall guy, like I'm 6'5". I started out at about 170 pounds, so I was like really skinny, weak, unathletic, kind of just like bad relationship with food and training and stuff like that. But then as my physique developed, I've gotten as big as 260 pounds at a pretty respectably low body fat. I've realized that in doing so, that mindset that I have developed has allowed me to have so much success in relationships and business and every other aspect of my life too. And so it's almost like I'm not really, I hate to say like I'm a life coach because it's so cringy, but it's almost like with my clients, fitness is sort of just like, the vehicle that gets your foot in the door for improving all these other things in your life. Because I have so many guys that they come to me and their life is sort of in shambles, and we focus on, to a degree, and we focus on the fitness. And then it seems like the more they, focus on like, beating the logbook or hitting a PR, or like just kind of having this like forward thinking, like always forward, never settling for mediocrity kind of mindset that, like I said, permeates in all these other aspects of their life, to just change the trajectory of everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. It really is a metaphor for everything else you do in life, and you can see it when you're coaching people. I work with just regular lifestyle people too, but you can see when they get to a point where it clicks. They get through that initial phase. I'm sure you've seen it with your clients where after they've been with you for a few months, they get locked in, they learn how to push themselves, they learn how to get through, and then they start seeing some progress, and they're like, oh crap, I didn't think I could do this. I didn't know I could look like this. I didn't know I could feel like this. and it does permeate, like you said, through every aspect of their life. That confidence comes out in business meetings, that ability to understand how to work hard helps with everything that you do, whether you're single or in a relationship. That manifests as more confidence in your relationships as well. It just really helps with everything. It just helps with everything in your life.
Totally, man. Yeah. And one of the big reasons that I wanted to interview you and that really excited me about this, about getting somebody who's like, mostly running a bodybuilding style page, is that, my clients are, it's a lot of like police, firefighters, like guys that are interested in like, getting stronger and kind of like pushing that performance aspect. But what I always tell them is like, hey, there's nothing more functional in the modern day and age than appearing a certain way and having like a certain presence, right? Because yeah, like having a heavy deadlift or being able to run far might be good for, quote, functionality or like emergency situations or whatever. But every single day of your life, you're interacting with people. And whether we like to believe it or not, people do judge a book by its cover. And so every interaction that you have with somebody, there will be some type of like pretext of how they treat you based on the way that you look. And so, by virtue of that, like the trajectory of your life can change very much, because I know firsthand, like when I was like a skinny kind of dweeby guy, that I didn't really get the time of day or as much respect, and I didn't have as much self-confidence. But now that I do, it has just opened so many doors for me. Like some of the best friendships and relationships and business partnerships that I've had have come, I think, partially because of like my physique, the way that I look, and then secondarily like the confidence that comes from that. And so I really want to push on people like the importance of the physique development, because it's not vain to want to look a certain way if it is part of like that functionality, right? Like there's nothing wrong with, wanting to have big shoulders, because people will treat you differently, which then will change like opportunities that present themselves in your life.
It's we can say it's vain or cold or whatever, but I mean, people definitely treat me differently now that I'm, muscular than they did when I was fat or skinny.
Totally.
They look at you differently. You command a different level of respect.
Yeah. And that could help you in business, right? Or it could help you in
Yep.
obviously romantic relationships, like, no brainer, but just anything, man. And it just makes people more interested to talking to you, because I'm sure there's people that come up to you at the gym and ask you gym stuff, but then maybe somewhere in that conversation you'd find out that, I don't know, this guy owns some company you'd like to work for, or has some friend that if you connected with would be your best friend ever. Or it's just like it just opens up so many doors. So I just really want guys to understand that, like, yeah, it's cool to like have heavy lifts and stuff like that and be able to run fast, but it's just as functional to have a good physique.
Pretty much all of my very fruitful business and personal relationships have been developed through fitness in some way.
Yeah, we don't have to have a personality or hair. We just get
Yeah.
big and jacked.
It's funny, like I met my first business partner, when I opened up my first business through the gym. I met my ex-wife through the gym. It's I would have never had my kids. All my circle now, they're all people that I've met through fitness. They're all, it's all connected, and you're matched up with people with similar mindsets. Most people that do work out or want to improve have a attitude of self-improvement across all areas of their life usually.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Like the type of people that are at the gym training are also the type of people that you want in your life, because if you surround yourself with people that have that forward thinking mindset, that's going to help be a catalyst for you. And one of the things I talk about all the time is like you have to kind of like cut out the fluff and the things that are holding you back. So if you can develop more relationships with people who have
Yeah.
a fitness background or a fitness priority in their life, then those are more likely to be the people that you want in your circle.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and it just sort of organically evolves that way.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about like some of the practical differences in training for performance versus bodybuilding, with approaches to like volume, intensity, exercise selection, like the logbook versus kind of like just hitting rep ranges and stuff like that. Like, what do you think some of like the main differences or overlaps are there?
Well, bodybuilding is pretty simple and straightforward. Really, we're training for hypertrophy, and I think a lot of guys, it's funny how bodybuilders get confused about what that means. I think a lot of bodybuilders aren't sure if they're a CrossFitter, an Olympic lifter, or a power lifter. It's funny, like every other area of focus, if you're a power lifter, like power lifters know exactly how to train for powerlifting. There's very programmatic ways of training. If you're a CrossFitter, it's very, very specific to you. If you're playing football, it's very specific to your sport. Bodybuilders are sort of like bipolar when it comes to their training. They're just all over the place.
Sure.
But bodybuilding really, to me, boils down to mechanical tension. We know the primary driver of hypertrophy is mechanical tension. That's pretty well established scientific fact. So, and this is a difference between bodybuilding and other styles of lifting, like where with most strength-based sports, whether it's CrossFit or powerlifting or Olympic lifting or whatever, it's strongman, whatever the case may be, the goal is to get the weight from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. Really, like so it's not mechanical tension is not the primary focus. You want to be in fact, you probably want it to be less about mechanical tension and more about movement efficiency. You want to move that weight in the most efficient way possible, so it's easier to get from, like I said, from point A to point B. And a real life example would be squats, where a strength athlete is going to put on knee wraps and a belt and widen their stance, turn their toes out, drop their hips between their legs, and then that's great for strength, but not the best for quad development. You're not working your quads at all. Where for a bodybuilder, I don't care about that. I want to develop my quads. I want to develop more specific muscles. I'm going to choose exercises and make them inefficient, so I'm placing the most mechanical tension I possibly can on the target muscle. So really, it's less about moving the weights and experiencing tension on the muscle. And so that, I think that is the primary difference you'll see. Now, here's the thing: a bigger muscle is always going to be a stronger muscle. We know that for sure. So, and this is why you'll see powerlifters and strength athletes will program in periods of hypertrophy training.
Exactly.
They will put hypertrophy training in. So I would say that's the functional benefit of hypertrophy training is, having a larger muscle. Now, in some sports, being bigger is not an advantage, man. I recreationally do jujitsu. Being the biggest guy is, while it looks cool, it isn't an advantage on the jujitsu mat. Mobility is. So training would be more geared towards mobility. While strength does have some benefit, being huge and getting pumps while you're on the mat, it's not a good thing. Same thing with basketball. Like I'm 250 pounds right now. If I were playing basketball, I wouldn't want to be 250 pounds on the basketball court. I want to be able to jump. I want to be explosive.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of my clients, so like we're very, I don't like to use the word hybrid, but we're kind of like this, like I said, sort of like this combination of physique development and strength development. And so they're kind of doing a little bit of both, because I believe there's a lot of synergy there. Like you said, a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle, and then a more efficient or stronger muscle / central nervous system / efficiency of movement, like neural patterning, allows you to then use more weight in the, isolation hypertrophy type exercises. So I think that, they can kind of like complement each other. But what I always tell them is like, hey, when you're doing your back squats today, you're thinking like a power lifter, because on that movement, we're very concerned with the number. Like we're chasing performance, we're chasing like, getting a bigger squat. But then you have to have this like mindset shift when you move to your leg extensions to where, hey, now we don't care about the number. We care about like, do we feel it where we want to feel it? And so, you kind of have to like shift your mindset depending on what you're doing. And yeah, I also, I'm the same way, right? Like mechanical tension is mechanical tension. Like my delt doesn't know if I have a 100-pound dumbbell or a 5-pound dumbbell. Like if I'm doing lateral raise like this with 100 pounds or like this with 5 pounds, it's the same type of tension.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a real life practical example of it is the fulcrum and lever. All you have to do is move the fulcrum, and the weight on the opposite end. If you put 100-pound weight on the opposite end, and all you have to do is move where the fulcrum is, and the weight experienced on the other end changes.
Right,
On
like
the opposite end.
the time
The weight on
Go ahead.
So I mean, the same way with the barbell. You may have 100 pounds on it, but if you change your angle of approach or your grip, you're changing the actual load experienced on the other end. And people, for whatever reason, people can't put that together. It's wild to me.
I know people can't put that together because I was squatting one time, sharing a squat rack in a crowded gym with somebody who was like squatting one plate and I was squatting four, and it was the only squat rack available, and it was a pain in the ass. And we get to like a certain point of the workout. I go over to get some water. Well, he starts unloading all of the 45s from one end of the bar. And then once the one end of the bar was too heavy, dude, the thing goes boom and it slams into the mirror, and like it's this big production. Like,
oh god,
so funny, dude. So I learned you can have up to 3 45s depending on the width. You can have up to like 3 45-pound plates on one side and none on the other, and you're safe. And that fourth one is what gets you.
Yeah, the fourth one will definitely do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So with your athletes, like I know like you said, you're into performance and bodybuilding too, but like do you ever have anybody kind of like focus on progressive overload or logbook, or like is it just depend on the client, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the client, where they're at in the lifting. So progressive overload has its, or progressing the logbook, I should say, has its limits when it comes to bodybuilding. When you're a beginner, I would say beginner to that intermediate phase, within the constraints of good form for bodybuilding, I think first and foremost, like when I'm trying to maximize hypertrophy, I want to make sure that people are actually lifting for hypertrophy. And once you have that form perfected for lifting for hypertrophy, then we progress
Right.
load, right? So like if you're progressing load, but you get better and more efficient at moving that load by changing angles and rep speed and all that stuff, did you actually really grow?
Yeah.
Or, so we take all the variables out. If you have the form maximized for hypertrophy, and all the variables stay the same: rep speed, constant form, etc., and you progress and you get stronger, you're probably are going to grow. You're probably going to get bigger. I mean, it's pretty simple. But there does come a point in time, when you reach that advanced, when you're progressing from that intermediate to advanced phase. So like I work with some professional bodybuilders. If you're bench pressing 405 for reps, like how much more are you going to progress without increasing risk?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a fact.
Right. So you then you have to get creative with things. Then there's things you can change. Like you can change volume. You can play around with form a little bit. You can um, try different exercises. There's all sorts of things. So like I would say for the beginner to intermediate lifter, yes, focus on progression. As you get into that advanced phase, then don't worry. I do think sometimes, and I chased the logbook a lot when I was younger. Sometimes guys can get too obsessed with the logbook, like they feel like they need to make progress every week. And it doesn't always work that way. As you get more advanced, that progress slows down. I mean,
yeah, your body's dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, that first year you're lifting weights. I mean, you might go from benching 95 pounds to 225.
Yeah.
That second year, you might go from 225 to 255.
Sure.
That third year, you might only add 10 pounds, and then it just progressively slows down from that, and I'm just using an arbitrary example.
Well, it's like any sport, right? Like the second you start something, you get really good really fast, and then it starts to level out. And then at the end, at the competitive stage, like people are making like 0.5% progress every year. And that's how it goes with learning any skill, really.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, like that, where the logbook can sometimes be your enemy. I see where guys get so obsessed with beating the logbook that they end up cheating and don't getting sloppy with form, just so they can beat a PR. And that's the thing I remind people in a bodybuilding context. We're not powerlifters. Nobody's asking you what your PRs are when you get on stage.
Right.
It's literally a physique contest. It's the guy that looks the best on stage. Now, you do need a certain amount of muscle to progress to get to that point. So, there is some strength advancement that goes on in early to intermediate phases. And as we get into the advanced phases, then there's, other detail that we have to pay attention to: diet, training, hormone, manipulation. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that gets, it gets more complicated as you get into, and then sometimes, like, I'm actually weaker now than I was in my 20s. I mean, I was way stronger in my 20s when I was doing powerlifting or power bodybuilding, whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Mhm.
But I'm bigger now.
Sure. Yeah, and there's many roads that lead to Rome, like you said, right? Like if you're already bench pressing 405 for reps, like now it's time to attack some different pathways, and that's what really intrigued me about like Stevenson's fortitude training, because he talks about all these different like mechanisms for growth, right? There's like maximal
Yeah.
loading, and then there's metabolic stress, and then there's volume. And so, what I like to think about it again with this kind of like synergy thing is like, hey, okay, let's say, I want to improve this guy's 10 rep max squat. Well, if I can make his cardiovascular system more efficient, now he's not going to be as limited, by
Yeah,
that. Now,
that's a consideration.
now just by virtue of him getting better at his cardio, his squat just went up, right? Obviously, there's all those secondary benefits of doing cardio as well. But yeah, I definitely think people can get wrapped up in the logbook. So I think it's a good metric, just like the scale, right? Like it's one metric that we use, but it's not everything. But yeah, sometimes people definitely get their heads wrapped in it too much. And because my training is very like sort of like progression focused, sometimes I have a hard time with my clients like slowing them down. It's like, hey, it's okay that you didn't increase your bicep curl by 5 pounds this week, because if everybody could increase their bicep curl by 5 pounds a week, we'd all be curling 5,000 pounds, and nobody is, right? So you have to find different, creative ways to create that new stimulus that then causes that new adaptation.
And believe me, I'm a numbers nerd. I love tracking and measuring things. I have a degree in computer science and data analytics, man. That's what I did for a living. I mean, I have spreadsheets for my spreadsheets, but but there is some context to it, right? So
Yeah, and it can also take away from some of like the intensity of the training, right? Like, have you seen Eric Bugenhagen? You know who that is?
Mm-mm.
So he's just kind of this like he's a fitness kind of personality online, but he's just kind of this like frat bro, like go heavy, do crazy Zercher deadlifts and like all these kind of like dangerous odd lifts. But his whole thing is like completely anti logbook and programming, because he thinks that it takes like the intensity and the fun out of training. And I definitely think there's some kind of middle ground to be had between like, technical proficiency and logbook and this sort of analytical thinking, but then also not having that, like not being so wrapped up in that mindset when you're actually in the gym that it detracts from like just the raw emotion and intensity that you can put into the training that will actually move that needle forward as well.
I logbooked for a decade, just to be transparent. So people are like saying they're going to say I'm anti-logbook. No, I did it for a decade, and and eventually I hit the wall. Like I kind of got to the point. I'm like, well, where am I going to go from here?
Sure.
I got up to where I was 300 pounds, and and I was, benching 405 reps, and doing crazy stuff. And I'm like, and then I was just getting hurt all the damn time trying to progress even further. And I'm like, well, I think I've hit my limit of what I can do. Now I got to rethink things.
Sure.
And what I did in my 40s, like I just kind of completely reinvented my training. I went back through and lightened everything up and really focused on trying to maximize mechanical tension. Like I really went through and like thought to myself, I'm like, all right, am I really feeling this in the muscle that I'm trying to work? Am I really like, and I dissected every single exercise that I was doing. And like, I realized like some of the stuff, like I was just moving weight.
Yes.
Like I was up to doing 4 or 5 on barbell rows, but my back wasn't that big.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
and I'm like, well, damn, and then I realized like, I'm just doing a shoulder shrug, really. So what, this is just a,
you get tired and you start lifting your chest, and it's like, hey, gravity's only pulling that way, buddy.
This is not a lat exercise. This is a shoulder shrug.
Sure.
And so like I went back through and just, it was a hit to my ego. I went back through and I pulled everything back and really tightened the form up on everything and made sure and chose some new exercises. Like I realized, like for me, being, you're a tall guy, man. Like I realized for me, like I used to squat a lot. I love squatting. I was strong at squats, but then I realized like this isn't making my legs grow. I and it's funny because you look at squat, like a lot of guys that are really strong, like powerlifters that are really strong at squats, they don't have that big of quads. They got big asses.
If they do, they're set up for squatting, right? Like those are the guys that are totally vertical in the hole, like mechanically.
Right. Great. Yeah. It's usually short guys. It's usually guys with short femurs that, like people like to point to Tom Platz. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, Tom Platz came out of the womb looking like he was made for squatting. I'm a basketball player. I'm not really made for squatting. And what I realized that most bodybuilders don't even fucking use barbell squats.
Yeah.
They just don't like that. I don't know really any professional bodybuilders that barbell squat.
Yeah. I mean,
They
for
almost,
me, like I told you, I'm 6'5" and I squat. I was, kind of like, dude, I've chosen all the wrong sports myself throughout my life. Like I should have played basketball, but I got into like CrossFit and powerlifting, all these things that are terrible for being tall. But I got my back squat in competition up to 585. But in the video of me doing that, dude, I had like freaking chicken legs. And eventually I was like, hey, I'm squatting because like everybody says like, hey, if you don't squat, you're a pussy. Like you have to squat, that's the cool thing to do. But it wasn't until I started doing like hack squats and safety bar squats and like, thinking about hypertrophy that my quads started growing. But then that also made my back squat go up when I did want to do back squat, simply because now I'm like more mechanically efficient. I think a lot of people don't pay enough attention to like, hey, what's going to work for your leverages in your body?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you have more muscle mass, you're going to move more weight because
Yep.
you clearly had already perfected the movement pattern, and you had the central nervous system part ironed out. So clearly that part, and then if you get bigger on top of it, you have more muscle that you can activate. You're going to move more weight. I think powerlifters figured that out a while ago.
Yeah.
But hypertrophy training seems to have just like fallen behind all the other types. It's really weird to me, like how hypertrophy training doesn't seem to be very well thought out for the most part.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, because a lot of the guys that I talk to, like when clients first come to me and they're just talking to me in the DMs, and I ask them what their training program is like, they're always like, well, I do chest, then I do back, then I do triceps or whatever, I do legs. And I'm like, well, like this isn't really the relevant part of your training, right? Like your body doesn't know what day it is. Your body doesn't know if you're doing squats on Monday or Wednesday. It doesn't matter. People are so obsessed with like the order in which they do things, but what they really need to be focused on is like, what are you doing when you're there? Like you said, like actually paying attention to the lifts that you're doing, or not doing things that are redundant. Like there's so many guys like, well, I'm in the gym 2 hours a day. And it's like, you're doing a barbell row, a single arm dumbbell row, a seated cable row, and then a hammer strength row. And it's like, you literally just did the same thing 4 times. Like do one of those and then do something else and then fucking go home, dude. And then you'll make way better progress. But like people just get so wrapped up in this idea that they have to have a split, and that like, and I was that way too, that like, oh, once I find the perfect split, like if only I did shoulders with chest instead of shoulders with back, yeah, that would make the difference in my progress or not. And it's just like, and that's why people are, they look the same and perform the same year after year. And they're kind of spinning their wheels because they're not thinking of their body as like a machine that adapts to stress. And that's what I try to, harp on so much, is like, hey, you grow calluses on your hands because of like manual labor, and it's a stress reaction from your body to put more skin there, right? So like, you need to give your body a damn good reason to put more muscle on your bicep, because that shit is metabolically expensive, dude. And if you don't give it a fucking reason, if it can already curl the 20-pound dumbbell 10 times and you don't give it a reason to put more muscle there and you just keep doing the same thing, it's not going to change anything.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And yeah, putting intent into the exercise, right? Like Poliquin has that compensatory acceleration thing where he was like, hey, you have to lift every single weight as if it's the most weight you've ever lifted. Like you control the eccentric and you go as hard as you can on the concentric. And then like you said, when you transition into more like lighter weights and bodybuilding later in life, not only are you getting more out of those lighter weights, but also now you don't have all that joint stress too. So like now you can do it more often, and it's less central nervous system fatigue too. So it's like the best of both worlds. I mean, like when Stan Efferding trained with Dexter Jackson, I think he said like, dude, we never used more than a 70-pound dumbbell, but Stan Efferding is like one of the, they call him the strongest bodybuilder in the world or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely a mindset shift that has to happen.
Yeah, and it was funny, but when I actually started using lighter weights and having more intent with my lifting, I started growing again. That was the mind-blowing part. I made some of the best progress in my life in my 40s.
Yeah, and I still struggle with that too, dude, because I have this like kind of performance, like numbers focused background as well, and I have to slow myself down. It's an ego check, because like I'll go in there and I'll put some machine on like one of the lightest weights and it'll crush me, and then like, well, I could go heavy and like bang it out, and obviously I think there's some virtue in things like cheat reps, right? So like if the limiting factor in like, again, like your bicep curl is like that first part of the movement, and then you kind of you tire the full range of motion out. And then maybe at the end of the set, you give yourself a little bit of heave to get out of that hole. Well, now I can put more tension where it's better leverage. And then I can expose that muscle to, more than it would have been able to do if I was only doing strict, or, using straps on a deadlift. Like my glutes, hamstrings, and back can handle more than my hands. So if I use straps, now I can make my body do more than it would have if this was my limiting factor.
Yeah. I mean, reflecting on it, I do think the early strength focused training really built a base for me to go from. I get guys all the time like, well, yeah, but that's not the way you used to train. I'm like, yeah, no, that's a fair point. I did train more like a strength athlete when I was younger and built that base of strength up. So I do think there is some validity to that, and it's just, I think there needs to be a mix of both, to be honest with you.
Sure. Yeah, let's transition a little bit, if you're okay with it, into like talking about like PEDs, supplements, and stuff
sure.
like that. So what do you think are some of like the overlaps between again, like, more physique oriented versus maybe more performance oriented, as far as like the types of compounds people would select, and like maybe some of like the dosing strategies and like health risk mitigation and like contingencies there?
Yeah, I mean, what I see is most men that are hitting middle age, 35 to 40, pretty much all of them are deficient in testosterone and growth hormone.
Yep.
I mean, those are the base bioidentical hormones. I don't know why, growth hormones kind of gotten a bad rap. I mean, everybody's scared of growth hormone for some reason, and it's probably the most benign thing as far as health effects that we could possibly take. But I would say, the base for performance enhancement really for anybody, and I see, like, let's be honest, professional athletes are using PEDs, but they're not using the crazy stuff like people think. Most of them are just using testosterone and growth hormone, the bioidentical hormones. I would say those are probably the most beneficial. We know the downstream effects of them since they naturally occur in the body. We know, like with testosterone, we know that it is a pro-hormone of sorts. It's going to reduce the DHT and estrogen at certain ratios.
Sure.
We know what the side effects are from having too much of those, and we can deal with those pretty efficiently. Growth hormone, we know that it rapidly starts to decline in your late 30s, and almost it goes to nothing in your 40s. And growth hormone is important for collagen synthesis, for joint and connective tissue health, for cellular repair. There's just a million different IGF-1 production, a million different possible benefits. So I would say for performance enhancement, most people should start there. And if you go to a TRT clinic, typically what they're going to do is prescribe you testosterone and then some sort of secretagogue,
Sure.
which is going, like Semarelin or ipamorelin, one of those that are going to increase natural growth hormone production. I think it's more productive just to take exogenous growth hormone.
I do too, instead of hammering the pituitary and having it release all the other shit that comes along.
Well, I mean, you can do the math on it. Like, let's say, you see some pretty profound numbers tossed around. Like, let's say for ipamorelin, I've seen, I'm just, from what I recall, you'll see like up to a 30 or 40% increase in your natural growth hormone production. Well, if you're 40 years old and you're making a half a unit a day and you're making 40% more, you're making 0.7 units a day.
Sure.
Now, I mean, what is that going to do?
Yeah.
Not much.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the secretagogues either, especially with the availability and price of some of these more, I mean, maybe some underground, but the higher quality, like,
Yep.
UGL kind of growth hormones. It's like, why would you spend twice as much on the Semarelin stuff? But obviously a lot of people, they haven't done the research, and so they kind of default to the clinic. And I see it all the time, because my clients will come to me and they'll say, well, I went to my GP and they said my test was in range. And I'm like, oh boy. And then I kind of have to go down that whole path of like, hey, this is how they develop the ranges. This is how they've been lowering the ranges and this and that. And I know from firsthand experience, dude, because when I was in the Marine Corps, when I got back from my deployment, I got tested for, hypogonadism at 21 years old. And my test level was like 350. And at the time, the range was still, 350 to 1,000. And so they sent me to an endo, and the endocrinologist is like, oh, we're going to like supplement your levels and bump you up. And at the time that made sense to me. Well, then a month later, I felt even worse, and my level was like 260. And that's when I started doing my own research. And I was like, hey, like day one of sex hormones is like, you have to replace it. You can't, quote, supplement your testosterone.
No,
so
that's when
that was like my first like loss of faith in doctors, and kind of realizing like, hey, you kind of got to take health into your own hands at some point.
Yeah, it's wild how many, and I do consults with doctors all the fucking time about hormones. They don't really learn this stuff in college.
Even they have to know so many things about so many different topics,
Even endocrinologists, I mean, they learn about the basic sex hormones, but mostly with endocrinologists, I mean, most endocrinologists, the work that they're doing is with people with diabetes. The
Exactly.
large majority of them, they're just dealing with diabetics all day long.
Yeah.
And they're not really. I mean, they certainly are learning. They learn about the hypothalamus pituitary axis and yada yada yada. But like they're not really aware of performance enhancement.
Yeah. And it's probably getting better nowadays because it's such a hot topic. But
yeah, I mean, you can go. Some of the TRT clinics are a little more forward thinking, but I would say if you're going to your endocrinologist for hormone replacement, you're probably going to get a
it's
bad
crazy.
result.
Some of the stuff I've seen people get put on, dude, like 100 milligrams of test a week and like 1 milligram of anastrozole a day. Like I've seen all that crazy stuff, dude. Like where I'm just like, how does this person have a medical license?
Well, they just don't know.
Yeah.
They're not dealing with this on a regular basis. It's lack of information, lack of good information, and then there's just been this dark cloud and stigma over testosterone or growth hormone because of sports for years. I mean, it's like hopefully that's been part of my hope with talking about it, is to normalize this a little bit and let people know it's not the goddamn boogeyman like everybody thinks it is.
Well, hey, if you're a girl who wants to be a guy, we'll give you as much testosterone as you want. But if you're just a guy that wants to be healthy, then you're a drug abuser.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is that going on too. Yeah, I just look, I'm all for bodily sovereignty. I mean, you should be able to do whatever the fuck you want with your body. Like, I don't want some politician telling me I can't take testosterone.
Right. Yeah, especially when they're obviously maybe they need some too.
Yeah, I mean, that's none of your business, right? What I do with my body, really. Like, I'm not hurting anybody. It's not a psychoactive drug. It's really asinine that these are scheduled drugs at this point. I mean, I made a post about it, and it got some controversy on social media, got some people angry at me. But to this day, I've yet to know of anybody that's going to rehab for growth hormone and testosterone. I just don't. I don't know of anybody that drained their bank account and robbed the gas station and because of growth hormone and testosterone.
Trend made me do that, actually. My first felony. No, so one of like the really common sort of prevailing strategies nowadays that you see a lot is to, and I don't know exactly who popularized this. Maybe it was initially, Todd Lee or somebody else, but I think one of the most popular things now is to run this kind of like replacement dose of testosterone and sort of use it like a pro hormone, like you said, and then add the anabolic on top of it and then titrate that dose based on the result that you see. So is that kind of like one of the main strategies that you use with your guys?
Well, I mean, that's what bodybuilders have been doing for 50 years.
I'm not saying that he came up with it or anything. That was the first time that came into my mind.
No. I mean, and that's kind of the idea. I mean, like the concept in bodybuilding has always been there is an upper limit of what you can run testosterone before DHT and estrogen start to become a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that's why these drugs were developed, these secondary drugs, because they realized that the androgenic effects and the estrogen conversion, DHT, et cetera, masculinization, all these things were a problem at a certain point. So, things like Primable and Masteron, Anavar, all these were developed to sort of remove the negative downside effects from the hormone reducing to other hormones,
right, and
leverage the anabolic effects of it. So they remove the androgenicity, if I can say that properly, and to enhance the anabolic effects. So that's why you'll hear of a bodybuilder running something like Masteron or Primable and alongside their testosterone. But you do need a certain amount of testosterone in play, because you do need some DHT and some estrogen conversion to be a normal functioning human being.
Sure.
Or a combination of progesterone and estrogen.
That's the importance of the blood work, dude. And one thing I appreciate about, your channel and some of the guys that you do lives with and stuff is you guys are so focused on like, hey, let's actually measure what's going on and do some, not only like harm mitigation too, but like also dial things in based on numbers, right? So like it's the same thing with nutrition. And we probably have a very similar philosophy where it's like, hey, we find the maintenance. If we want to grow, we add 70 grams of carbs. And when that stops working, we add another 70. And same thing with reducing, right? Like same thing with the substances. It's like, okay, like, we add, whatever it is, 100 milligrams of this thing. we stop growing, then we add a little bit more. It's like lowest effective dose strategy instead of where guys are like, hey, I'm going to run 750 tests my first cycle. And it's like, well, you can only achieve so much muscle growth no matter what you're on. So it's like, why are you using all this medicine where you're just going to cause more side effects? And then now the next time you do it, you're going to have to start at that dose.
Well, the analogy I've heard, you think about it this way: you have a bucket you can fill with testosterone, and there's two holes in the bottom. Out one hole comes estrogen, out the other hole comes DHT, and then the rest is used for muscle building. But the more muscle you have, the bigger the bucket is. So, but if you try to dump 5 gallons of water into a 1 gallon bucket, it's just all going to spill over the edges, and then you end up with even more estrogen and DHT conversion. You end up with all the problems, all the side effects.
Yeah. Same thing with food, or even with training, right? Like you got guys that go in there and they're like, I want to do my 2-hour workout, and it's like, well, you don't need to do that. And yeah, now you're going to have all these like side effects and all this fatigue from doing more than you needed, because all you need to do is stimulate that growth and then get the hell out of there.
Yeah. And look, I'm a big dude. I can eat 1,000 grams of carbs and not get fat, but you're
you have a place to put it,
right. You're 165 pounds and you do that, you're just going to get fat. It'd be the same way if you tried to come into the gym and bench 405 and you're 165 pounds, you're just going to get smashed.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, very similar.
So it's all relative, but I would say this: look, with the PEDs, there really haven't been any significant studies done on the PEDs in 50 years. Really, all the stuff we have is old, and a lot of it's rat models. A lot of it's just really old. And the best information that we have is all the anecdote we've collected from bodybuilding. I mean, these are the guys that have pushed the limits of stuff. And I literally, like I said, man, I do 200-300 consults a year, and I look at hundreds of blood panels, and I see trends. That's not to say that this is exactly what happens. Different people, like you said, you seem to be more prone to DHT issues. Some guys aren't, but I do see trends. I do see certain things. Like some people have no problem with nandrolone, but I do see quite a few people that do. I would say it's one of the more side effect wrought, PED, 19 Norse, it's tend to present more problems than say.
Yeah, very, very like seemingly complex and vague, right? Because like obviously like with testosterone, it's very clear, like if you take too much, these are going to be the side effects. But with the 19 Nors, it seems like it's a little bit more nebulous, like what you'll experience and how it will look. And it's just more complex.
Physiologically, it makes sense because progesterone is not really present in a man's body at any significant level, right? Whereas DHT is, and testosterone is, and we're introducing something that's not supposed to be there.
And this is what I always talk about when I talk about SARMs. People ask me about SARMs. I'm like, hey, these are research chemicals that were abandoned by pharmaceutical companies after dumping millions of dollars into them. Do you think that maybe they were abandoned for a reason? And like, hey, maybe you should just use testosterone that your body knows what to do with, and we've got a century of safety data on. But because of the delivery mechanism, there's like this taboo around it, right? So it's just funny that people like they're like, well, I want to be natty and this and that. And it's like, yeah, so you're going to go take this weird chemical that some company said like will kill you because you don't want to like inject something which is arguably much safer.
Well, I just go back to the fundamentals. We know what testosterone
exactly
reduces to. They're all naturally occurring hormones in the human body. Rad 140 isn't.
Right.
There is some naturally occurring nandrolone in human body, but it's very minimal. But look, nandrolone reduces to dihydronandrolone. Like we don't know what the long-term effects of. I mean, we kind of have ideas, but there's we kind of know, but we're not 100% sure.
Sure. Well, cool, man. We're about an hour in here, and I don't want to take up all your time. I'm sure you got other stuff to do. So if you want to wrap it up, we can do that.
If you had another question or two, I can go. That's fine.
I don't know, man. That's kind of like, let's see, what else did I have? We talked training methods. We kind of talked like metrics, progress, PED, priorities, risk tolerance. Like I don't know, man. Is there anything else that you think would be kind of helpful to go over based on like some of the stuff that I mentioned? And I can cut all this fluff out too. I'm not going to put us chatting like
Yeah,
here.
I mean, nutrition, I think that's a big overlooked thing.
Sure.
There's just some fundamentals with nutrition, I would say.
We're on the same page, dude. I'm very much like you, like, hey, the proteins and the fats kind of remain the same, and then we just manipulate the carbs based on what we want to happen with the body composition.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, carbohydrates are just energy, right? And we can look at the way, once again, this is another thing, like with the PEDs, we look at the downstream effects of how your body metabolizes these various substrates of energy. Fats, for the most part, are energy. Essential fatty acids are used for vitamin transport and cellular repair and yada yada yada, but it's very minimal amount. But for the most part, most Americans are eating a diet high in saturated fat, low in essential fatty acids. I think that's a big problem I see is most people eat way too much saturated fat, don't get enough EFAs in. And saturated fats also are just energy. So and we can look at how that energy is partitioned. When your body is always going to prioritize glucose as a fuel source, just period, end of story. Whether we like that or not, that's just how it goes.
Yeah, you have
Secondarily, it will burn fat as a fuel source, and in the presence of no carbohydrates, your central nervous system, brain, etc., do need some glucose to run, and your body can, in situations where there are no carbohydrates present, convert fats to ketones to as a substrate for energy. There still is some glucose that's necessary, so your body will go into gluconeogenesis to make up the difference for that. But ultimately, like, the reason why I tend to prioritize carbohydrates as a fuel source is because we have, and I think this is where carbohydrates have kind of gotten a bad name. And I understand why people do keto diets and carnivore diets and things like that, because it's easy. It's an elimination diet, man. You don't need a calorie count. You don't have to think. If you say, I'm not going to eat carbs, there's no more pizza, there's no more hamburgers, there's no more French fries, there's no more ice cream. There's
then you
no
also
more.
get to be a part of a cult where you're like, I'm better than you because I know something that you don't know. Like, there's a whole aesthetic around it.
There isn't some magic to it other than you've just done an elimination diet and created a calorie deficit.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And like you said, gluconeogenesis, right? So like, hey, your body has to maintain its blood glucose level no matter what. And so if you don't eat carbohydrates, your body's going to cleave those proteins and fats in the liver, and it's going to create it anyway. So it's like, why don't you just give your body what it needs instead of making it go through this like dirty backup process? And then now you can actually train hard enough to maintain the muscle mass that you have and not be starving, and then also not downregulate your thyroid. And then you can actually lose body fat in a sustainable way while still having good performance in the training, right? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me why people would think that would be the best approach, especially if you want to maintain any amount of like performance. And I think that a lot of the people that push these carnivore and keto diets were already jacked before, like they didn't build their muscle doing that. And then they got lean, and now they're kind of promoting that keto diet. But I don't think there's anybody that really like got big eating that way.
Well, I'll tell you, there's nobody on Mr. Olympia stage that eats that way.
Yeah, exactly. Just it doesn't.
That should tell you what you need to know. And look, I'm not trying to, people get upset when I talk about it. Like, it's better than being fat.
Yeah.
Right. If it's a way to get, and I'll have clients that do run on keto diets. I mean, I have guys, like, if you're severely obese and insulin resistant and yada, 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 well, we'll yank the carbs out and get things, I kind of like doing a protein sparing modified fast. I'll run where we basically do low fat and low carbohydrate and just kind of force. That is the most, studies show that's the fastest way to lose weight. It's not the most ideal, but if you need to get weight off quickly, it's the way to do it. But if you're a guy that's lifting weights and want to enhance performance, glucose is important for performance in the gym, for lifting weights. In fact, it's so important that your body has adapted to store glucose in the muscle for later use. And that's what makes carbohydrates unique compared to fat. Fat, either there's one or two things that happens with, well, really three things. It can be used for metabolic things, such as vitamin transport, cellular repair, but that's a very minimal amount. Probably 30, 40 grams a day is really all you can get away with. Anything else, it either gets burned immediately as energy or stored as body fat. Those are the only two things that can happen to it.
Exactly.
Whereas
Filler, like you said.
carbohydrates we can use for energy. We can also store them in the muscle as muscle glycogen. And if we look at studies, an untrained individual, a person who's never lifted weights, can store up to 500, somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 grams of glucose as glycogen.
Right.
A big bodybuilder, a guy like me, I can eat 1,000 grams of carbs if I'm glycogen depleted.
So that kind of, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say, you can actually, and this is the cool thing with it. If you're glycogen depleted, you can actually have 1 to 2 days a week where you're in a caloric surplus and not store body fat, because your body takes that excess glucose and stores it in the muscle as glycogen. And there's all sorts of downstream metabolic benefits from doing this.
Exactly.
You're going to have increased mTOR. You're going to have increased insulin, lowered AMPK. It is protein sparing. Increased IGF-1 is a downstream effect. All these important processes that are necessary for muscle growth. And a lot of people miss out on that. And not only that, having that day where you eat a little bit extra, if you're on, like let's say for carb cycling for a diet phase, you can go 6 days a week in a deficit and then have this one refeed day, and we get a spike in metabolism from having that caloric surplus without storing body fat, and we reduce metabolic slowdown that happens during dieting.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely, dude. Like that's huge, is manipulating that. I'm a big fan of the carb cycling as well for that specific reason. And I guess kind of in that same vein, the last thing I wanted to ask you was, one of the like things that I put out sort of recently was like, people have this idea that like you can't lose body fat and gain muscle at the same time, right?
No, you absolutely can.
Right. And obviously, okay. And so this is the thing, right? Is like, I said this, was like, your body is not a 24-hour clock. Your body doesn't say at the end of the day, let's pull out our calculator and total up what happened and then decide if we're going to grow or not. So why couldn't you theoretically like do fasted morning cardio when your body's more primed to oxidize, fat? And we know we can do this with exogenous hormones. We can make our body do this. So like, hey, burn fat in the beginning of the day when you're in this fasted, like fat oxidizing state, and then use glucose after eating later in the day toward building muscle. Because if all that mattered was calories in and calories out, then you could eat theoretically, for the first 6 months, you could eat, as many calories as you would need for the year, and then not eat for the next 6 months. And you would be exactly the same. But we know that doesn't happen, right? That's not what your body would end up doing. So yeah, do you have that opinion too, that like it's definitely possible in some regards to either do both at once, or at least completely or mostly mitigate fat gain while growing using a timing strategy like that?
Yeah, it is possible. And then it's not a violation of thermodynamics. It's just how your body partitions energy.
Exactly.
But we're it's still calories in, calories out. We're not violating thermodynamics by doing this. We're just your body. And I think this is where people get confused, and it is a little difficult to understand, is that your body has multiple ways of storing and using energy. The energy still exists. It's still there. It's just being, it's the same thing with the carbohydrates. Like, how is it possible to eat in a surplus and not get fat? But people forget that your body can store energy in multiple ways. You can store it as liver or muscle glycogen. And the same thing with fat burning. I mean, it's and also, like, when you're in a deficit, it is possible to lose muscle too. Like we talked about, like gluconeogenesis. When you get into a state where your body is starting to break down amino acids for energy, that's burning muscle. So that's not what we want, right? And that's like where the carbohydrates prevent that from happening. That's why you hear the carbohydrates are glucose sparing. That's another thing that people forget, that your body also stores energy as muscle tissue. Protein is stored energy.
Sure.
So, if you're cranking a hard diet and not eating enough protein, or not eating enough, if you don't have a proper energy substrate in place, your body can burn muscle. I mean, you'll see it with marathon runners. Marathon runners get skinny fat. You'll see these guys that run, you would think they would be the most ripped people on the planet, but they aren't usually.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand. Like, if you have kind of like a background in hormones, or you've used this stuff before, or at least delved into it a little bit, you kind of already get the gist of the idea that like your body, based on its signals, can do different stuff with what you're eating, right? And we know that because like if I were to eat 1,000 calories and work out versus 1,000 calories and not go, lift weights, obviously my body's going to do something different with it. But I think that people just get this like calories in and calories out thing hammered into their brain so much that they just completely forget all the nuance. And obviously, like you said, with the keto diet and the carnivore, like people just want an easy answer to stuff.
Yeah.
And so they just want to go with like the easiest, like if I do X or if I do A, then I will get B kind of thing. Without like considering all the nuance, which is where, having somebody like you as a coach would come in, right? To kind of like help somebody navigate some of those more complex topics.
Well, it's very complex how your body stores and burns energy. We're and I think this is the thing that people forget. We're meant to survive, right? We're made to handle tough, terrible environments. And if our body only burned fat, we wouldn't have made it through the ice age, man. We wouldn't have made it through long periods of starvation. Your body can burn it pretty much anything for energy, really. I mean, it can burn protein, it can burn fat, it can burn glucose. It's one of our adaptive gifts is our robust ability to survive. And if we understand how those energy substrates work and how they're manipulated and how they're stored, we can take advantage of that to leverage body composition. So like being in a calorie deficit doesn't guarantee that you're going to burn fat. It guarantees that you're going to burn energy. I think that's where people get confused. And energy is stored as fat, stored as protein, which is in the muscle tissue, and stored as glycogen. So there's multiple, and really to optimize performance, we want to maximize fat burning, we want to minimize protein and glucose burning. Those are the things we want to preserve.
Is that where the GLPs get the negative rap, right? Where they say, oh, it causes sarcopenia, it causes you to lose muscle. It's like, no, it doesn't cause you to lose muscle. It's that you're literally not eating and you're also not training. So like, of course you're going to lose muscle.
Well, what it is most people eat a high fat, high carbohydrate, low protein diet. They don't train. And then when they get on a GLP-1, they eat less of that same shitty high fat, high protein.
Still stay on the couch.
Or a high fat, high carbohydrate diet. And then so what's left to burn?
Exactly.
Right. I mean, it's just, that's what's going to happen. Of course, you're going to lose fucking muscle. Nick Walker used retatrutide on his contest prep this year, and he's one of the largest human beings on the planet. I don't think he lost any muscle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone's on it now, right? Like I'm using it right now in this bulk simply because like for me, it improves my digestion. It makes my bloods a little bit better. It's a small enough dose that it doesn't seem to do anything to my appetite, but it does just kind of take the edge off just enough that like it allows me to do this a little bit more cleanly. And then you get like, some of those, fat burning effects as well. So, I mean, it seems like you could really leverage it in any situation, just kind of based on the dose.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back real quick on the cardio thing. And this is another thing too. Like I hear like a lot of the sciencey nerds, people talking about, fasted cardio doesn't work better than fed cardio. And yes, when you're talking about net energy balance, that is 100% true that it doesn't. But what bodybuilders figured out is you're in exactly what you were talking about. When you're in a fasted state in the morning, especially if you're using PEDs to change the equation a bit, and you're doing the right type of cardio, if you're doing steady state cardio, which is going to be more lipolytic in nature than glycolytic, you can actually, it's where you're burning the energy from, not how much energy you're burning that matters more. And I think that's where the confusion is. And I don't know why somebody really smart hasn't thought about this. So we're actually burning more fat, less glucose when we do it in a fasted state. Typically, that's sort of my theory on it. I mean,
there's even guys that will use a low dose like Humalog before cardio, right? Because they're like reducing their sugar so much that it's going to put them in that
right, because it forces glycogen storage, and then your body is forced to. I'm not telling people to go out and do that, but
no, same thing with L-carnitine though, or like cardarine. Like all these things are just basically shifting where the energy metabolism is happening from. So like, obviously your body can do different things depending on what you're telling
I think I think that's the piece of the formula. Like people want to make it simple math, and I think that's the piece of the formula. It's not just being in a calorie deficit. It's where those calories are being burned.
Yeah.
Right. We want to burn fat. We don't want to burn protein structures. We don't want to burn glucose if we can help it. We want to preserve those substrate. And it's just like, during lifting, around your window of lifting, GLUT4 transport is increased. So you're going to have an increased ability to store glycogen and use glucose.
Right. Hence para-workout insulin use.
Yeah, and increased carbohydrate use around the workout window, lower, and it would, we know for a fact that, if you're, as we mentioned earlier, that if you're in a high glucose state, you want to keep the fats as low as possible. So that's why you do low fats, high carbohydrates around the workout window. Once again, we're leveraging nutrient partitioning to our advantage, how your body partitions this energy. Anyway, that's my long rant on nutrition. I thought it was important.
I loved it. Yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, we'll wrap it up, man. We're going on a long time here, and I'm sure you're busy, like I said. So yeah, tell people that are watching this where they can find you.
Anabolic Bodybuilding on YouTube, Paul K. Barnett on Instagram. I'm Paul K. Barnett on X too. I recently was banned on YouTube and got my channel back. So if you
I was worried there for a minute, dude.
Yeah, so was I. I upset somebody by telling them to work harder.
Oh, really? It wasn't for like what you were discussing. It was like a comment report.
Somebody mass reported all my videos.
Yeah,
I pissed somebody off.
Scummy behavior, but that's the way that it goes. So,
yep.
Well, awesome, man. It was great to talk to you and meet you. I kind of almost just feel like I'm watching one of your videos because it's the same backdrop. So that made me feel at home, man.
Well, it's nice talking to you, man.
For sure. I'll talk to you soon.